Even in the year 2021, there isn't an academic consensus as to what well-being even means. That's what we're going to talk about today, is psychological well-being, some misconceptions, what I personally think is the secret weapon and the roadmap to actually achieving it, or at least getting closer than you currently are. Now, the longest standing definitions that we have and what we typically come up with is something associated with feelings. Maybe peace, maybe even what the guru Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls flow, or an autotelic state. These are all fancy words to describe emotions, positive effect, they also call it. The only problem with these definitions is that we're no closer to deconstructing how to induce them or demand that they're present than we were when the words were first invented. The answer most people have is to strive towards a more peaceful, desireless state of being. Meditation apps are on the rise. But tell me this, do you actually know anybody who sustained a meditation practice for over a decade? Do you know anybody? Look, I've tried them too. I think all these things that we try are good. They're good things to try. They're good correlates, but a correlate isn't a cause and effect. I have, though, found some information that, based on my own experiences, seems true, and it's this. Psychological well-being has nothing to do with you feeling happy. Psychological well-being has everything to do with having meaning, direction, and ultimately striving to be the best version of the self that you were designed to be on this earth. Now, Carol Riff is a psychologist that's been studying this way before it was popular, way before terms like flourishing were even on the scene. What she determined is chasing after these feel-good feelings could be more appropriately called hedonic happiness, whereas the pursuit of excellence has classically been called eudaimonic. Now, eudaimonia is a Greek word that does in fact mean happiness. But if you've read any Aristotle, Plato, or Socrates, you know that their definition is more closely related towards pursuing this highest human good versus doing something for ease or for the sake of pleasure. Now, the reason that I like this word eudaimonia, or eudaimonic definition of well-being, is because it demands action. It demands change. It demands this catalyst to be in place in order for you to evolve or continually iterate into this better version of yourself. So if this is true, well, what activities enable you to live well? What does it mean to be well from this more action-based definition of the word? Well, fortunately for us, there's some more research that's out there. And there's a study by Dodge, Daly, Huyton, and Sanders that actually gives us a roadmap. They said that well-being is the balance point between the individual resources that you have and the challenges that you'll face in your life. Now, what words stick out to you in that? To me, it's challenge. Riff goes on to say that the way to well-being is pursuing both challenging and rewarding events. That's an existentialist dream. It means you can't just talk about it, you gotta do it. You gotta be about it. Now, I'll give you the street version of everything that we've just said. If the good life equals personal potential, and personal potential means deliberately introducing challenge, then a good life equals a strenuous life. Now, I use those words on purpose, a strenuous life, because I've been reading this amazing book right now called Mornings on Horseback. If you're not familiar with this book, it's written by David MacCullough, and it's about Teddy Roosevelt, but before he was a Rough Rider, before he was president, before he was anything. He was an asthmatic. He was undersized and overtoothed. They said that he had really big teeth for the size of his body. At one point in his life, his father and his doctor said that the only way he was going to beat this challenge or this disadvantage was to have his organs and his body to work. And the only way that he could get them to work was to challenge them. Now, TR goes on to do just that, and this made such an impact in his life that he even gave a speech about it in Chicago. And do you know what the speech is called? It's called The Strenuous Life. Can't make this up. He said that strenuous effort and overcoming hardship were ideals to be earned. I'm going to put a link to this below the video, and it's well worth a read. It's amazing. So, maybe, just maybe, the ultimate irony of our life is that in order to reach this state of well-being, there will be intermittent moments of great struggle, great challenge, in order to, through purification, get to this place that seems like we can finally relax. You know, if you think about it intuitively, it makes sense. Anything that you've done in your life that you look back and you're proud of was probably somehow correlated with difficulty and not ease. Another irony in talking about Teddy Roosevelt is that he had none of the resources that we have. God, I sound like an old man, but it's true. Now back to the study from Dodge, Daly, Huyton, and Sanders. There's this cute graph that shows that it's not just challenge that we need, but resources. We could come up with some hypothetical scenario where the challenge was too great, it was too dangerous, it was too significant, it was too inappropriate based on the resources that we had available. And so yeah, it's a seesaw. It's this balancing act between the two. But I'd argue that we have all the resources we could dream of, but only a fraction of the challenge. Now I know what you're thinking. As this video is being made, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Well, there's challenges all around. And the pandemic's been hard, and maybe that's the point. Maybe it's been extra hard because of how much ease we've had in navigating life before it. Maybe we weren't prepared for a really strenuous year and a half. I've done a little thought experiment, and if Teddy was alive in present day, would he be thinking that wearing masks and all this mishgosh we had to do, I wonder if he'd think that was hard or not. But I digress. Now, I believe that a secret hack to psychological well-being is to deliberately and intentionally put yourself into hard and challenging situations. Now, there's some education involved, absolutely. That's where we continually develop the resources and the protocol of how to process resiliency, how to have autonomy, how to have the right frame of mind to handle things that are coming our way. But that's for another time. It's secretly the reason that I fell in love with fitness and with CrossFit specifically. Sure, the methodology was sound, but what I anecdotally found to be true is that some of the workouts were better not just for my physical well-being, but some were actually more beneficial for my mental well-being. There are some workouts, in fact, that I don't think are good for your body, but they're great in pursuit of this tangible, actionable goal of improved psychological well-being. I call this the most dynamic form of meditation, some of these things that I'm going to describe. You see, I personally have a hard time doing the breathing and the zen and the no stress and the silence your monkey mind thing. To me, it feels passive in a way. I like something to be so hard that physiologically it's the only thing that I can focus on. You want to see what real zen is? Talk to somebody after they've climbed a mountain, finished an hour roll in jiu-jitsu, or just completed a hero workout. So I believe, and this is one of the central thesis of my life, that intentional physical duress and purposeful stress is a secret weapon to producing a higher state of psychological well-being. Way better than any transcendental meditation session could. However, over the years, and this is really unfortunate, but CrossFit and functional fitness for me has become redundant. There's only so many combinations of these 47 different movements that I can put together that produce this same psychological challenge for me. Now, physically, I think there's an endless progression that can be had. But mentally, it's become rote. It's become a routine for me. It's become commonplace. I'm relatively comfortable with most of the things that I've been exposed to from a fitness standpoint. Therefore, I've had to up the ante over time. Ever so often over the years, we would introduce something that was so physically taxing, it produced what's called an autotelic experience. Some examples of this for me personally were 24-hour ruck march, the Inman mile. You put a barbell on your back that weighs what you weigh, and you carry it for 1 mile. Very challenging. A Concept 2 ultra marathon. That's where you have the bike, the ski, and the erg, and you cycle through these things until you accumulate more than an ultra would be in terms of mileage. 1,000 power cleans. 100 barbell thrusters at body weight. Stair climb the equivalent of the Empire State Building for time, and more. These many pain quests, once again, were great inoculations for stress and the strenuous life, but over time, they also fell short. They needed to be bigger. They needed to be grander, maybe a higher degree of stakes, of failure. I knew I found the sweet spot when, as soon as I did something, I wouldn't feel like I needed to repeat it in the next calendar year or maybe ever. And then, as chance would have it, as Lady Fortuna shined down upon me, I came across this magazine article from Outside Magazine years ago, and they used the word MISOGI, and it all made sense to me. Do you know this word? Look, the Japanese are always centuries ahead of us, but the word MISOGI, I think I'm saying it right, describes a practice of ritual purification. Isn't that beautiful? Just think about that. Ritual purification. They pilgrimage to this freezing cold waterfall. They throw themselves under it, and the physical strain of this is so gnarly that they can only handle it once a year. So a MISOGI is a workout that you can only perform once a year. That's how challenging it is. Now, I'm not a masochistic. I don't love pain. But in this new chapter in my life that was born, I would go like Don Quixote and pursue these yearly quests where the challenge was high enough that there would be about a 50% chance that I'd fail at this. An unknown environment seemed to be a key component in upping the positive anxiousness that I got to feel. Now, there was a time when I used CrossFit as this resource and did regionals and the CrossFit Games 1 year. I tried out and made, to my surprise, the U.S. bobsled team and competed for a couple of years. More recently, I started jiu-jitsu and have competed in the world tournament for 2 years. And most recently, I've picked up splitboarding and skinning up a mountain instead of riding a lift. Now, I think that if I had to deconstruct this, the best things aren't anything that's official. The best things aren't necessarily a tournament or a sport or even something that you put on social media. It's this thing that you just make up. It's this thing that once a year it's like, hey, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna do this. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. It's not gonna kill me, it's not gonna hurt anybody, but it's making me very nervous to think about. Can I tell you a little secret? There is a moment every time, actually several, that I don't enjoy these things. I struggle with anxious thoughts, and I have an overproductive mind of what could potentially go wrong in the future, but I've never regretted any of this stuff. Everything I look back on and I say, man, that sucked, and man, I'm so glad that I did it. A few years ago, we led a group up Mount Arkansas in Colorado. Some guys had never even put skis on before, and we skinned up, we switched our boots, put helmets on, put the crampons on our feet, and actually tried to mountaineer technically up the rest of the mountain. It was real hard. Maybe a little too hard. And guess what? Nobody made it to the top. We all failed. Now, the reason that I tell you that is that part is like a detail. Like, it doesn't even really matter to me. And so this whole concept that we're talking about, I think, has more to do with the experience. It has more to do with the challenge versus the accomplishment. It has more to do with continually trying to teeter-totter and let the seesaw go back and forth between the resources that you have and the challenges that you expose yourself to. Why do I share that? Well, I think that all of us have this fear of not being able to accomplish or finish something. But with this that I'm talking about, it really doesn't matter that much. I think what's more impactful is that you do it and you expose yourself to these different kinds of stimulus. So what do I think? I think waiting for this blissful mental state to arrive and make you feel happy is not something you can really control. We can probably look back and say, man, that was a time where things were good. But you can't really control that. And it's also different for every person. So we can't systemize it. I think we've been given these physical bodies that we're supposed to work and use and strain throughout all the days of our life. I think in the year 2021, we're 99.99999% fitter than the history of mankind, but all we put them to use for is more exercise. Boring. After a while. We have all these physical resources and none of the physical challenges. Like the Greeks of old, we should pursue the most exalted version of ourselves, and that can't come through pleasure and leisure. I wish it was true. I love watching Netflix just like you do, or even just thinking about it. It has to come through action, and it has to come through challenge. I think the most punk rock thing that we can do is exercise not just to feel good and look good, but to intentionally subject ourselves to our own quests or MISOGIs throughout our lives and never post on Instagram about it. Different adventures we take every year until we die, which we all will. This is our roadmap. The actual action, I think, scholars maintain, that you can take to achieving an improved psychological state of well-being.